So you heard a bit from Dave about what the children's movement is all about. We are the state's leading voice on early childhood, championing the policies and investments that help young children thrive in the 0 to 5 years. It is all of you tuned in here who make us a movement, and that is why it is so special that you are here. My first task as MC is to get through a few housekeeping items, and then I get to introduce our keynote. So first off, we will make good use of the chat today, and we hope you will too. I already see so many people introducing themselves. Why don't we have you all introduce yourselves in the chat? Tell us who you are and where you're watching from. And our intention is to learn together. So we'll be sharing all kinds of things we don't have time to say on screen. And we love seeing your energy and ideas in the chat. We just ask that you not use this space to solicit. We are recording the summit today, so all of this information will be available afterwards if you want to watch again, if you want to share with others. We're also using the live transcript. So if you want to read along a transcript in English, just click that CC Live Transcript button at the bottom of your screen. As I mentioned earlier, we're offering live Spanish interpretation. So una vez más, si desea escuchar en español, oprima el botón interpretación y seleccione el canal para su idioma. We have only 2 hours together and a whole lot to cover. So we'll keep introductions brief, we'll keep it moving quickly with a mix of live and produced content that will encourage you in this work, spark new ideas, and introduce you to Florida leaders. You can find more information about our speakers, about the flow of the agenda today on our website. Just click the Built to Thrive button right on our homepage, and you'll also find that link in this very busy chat. Thank you all. Finally, if you're an early childhood educator and you want to collect a certificate of participation for these 2 hours, you can email info@childrensmovementflorida.org to receive your certificate. And that is a long email, so that's also listed in the chat for you to copy and paste. So before we begin, I must thank our sponsors whose generous support allows us to convene all of you and make this program happen. A big thank you to Florida Blue and Marco Polo Learning. You are champions for Florida's children in so many ways. And wow, there are almost 400 of you here so far today. It's great to see you all introducing yourselves. And I'll give you a moment to scroll through and see who's here from all over the map. While you do, we'll also ask you to respond to a quick poll and let us know how you heard about today's program. We reach out in a lot of different ways, and we want to know how we are reaching all of you. So we'll give you just a minute. And as I scroll through this chat, I see business leaders, I see legislators, I see parents, agency staff, leaders. You are all important to us. So as you're filling that out, I will just thank again our partners who have shared this far and wide across the state. Thank you for helping us to bring everybody together. And what great energy we have to get started. Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker on children, caregiving, and competitiveness. Many of you have seen the Florida Chamber Foundation's report on untapped potential that was released before this year's legislative session. It showed that our state has a loss of $5.4 billion each year due to inadequate childcare for our workforce, and that is huge. Our keynote today will take us a step further, looking at the data on how employees' caregiving responsibilities affect employers directly in surprising ways. Of course, this is important to us at the movement and our Bosses for Babies initiative, where we've gathered business champions for early childhood who know that when businesses support families, everyone wins. Joseph Fuller no longer has young children at home, but he knows the joy of being a grandparent. He is a professor at the Harvard Business School, where he co-directs the school's long-term project, Managing the Future of Work. He also co-heads the university-wide project on the workforce. And that means he spends his days anticipating what you need to know about the future. I'll turn the floor over to you now, Joe, and then we'll come back shortly for a conversation with a couple of our Bosses for Babies. So over to you.
Well, thank you, Madeline. It's a pleasure to be here. And I know the important impact that the children's movement has had in Florida. And that I'm hopeful this conversation can advance the dialogue there and come up with more innovative answers. As you might imagine, being a professor at Harvard Business School, a lot of my focus is on the important role employers play in either causing caregivers to be marginalized in the workforce or engaging them and empowering them to participate in the workforce. So as we get going this morning, I'd like to share a little bit of my research, all of which can be found on our website here at Harvard Business School. So if you just Google my name and the future of work, Harvard Business School, after a couple of commercial ads, you'll find a lot more data of the type we're going to touch on very briefly this morning. Let me ask that the slides get turned on now so we can share them. And we'll go to the first slide, please. We'll go to the next slide. So I think all of this discussion and that $5.4 billion number that Madeline cited is a function of the tightness of the US labor market. And here we can see that what's the so-called market tightness index, which just shows how little spare capacity there is in terms of people who want to be in the workforce but are not currently engaged, has got workforce participation in the United States leveled off around the year 2000. And while there's been a very modest uptick in women's workforce participation recently, generally it's been stagnant in the post-COVID era. And that means that employers in the US are beginning to face something that's driven by that lower workforce participation rate, but also the slowing growth of the population in the US. We have a new situation in the US where labor, particularly labor with certain types of skills, is likely to be in a long-term short supply. We're going to have a shortage for a while. And therefore, it's particularly important on multiple axes that employers do what they can to bring more people into the workforce. Next slide, please. Well, let's talk about women's workforce participation. And when we look at workforce participation through the lens of what causes people not to be seeking work outside the home, as you can see on the left-hand choice, 50% of women who report that they would be interested in work, but they're unable to work outside the home currently, are doing that because of caregiving obligations. So really a big driver of workforce participation for women is their need to give care to children, seniors, spouses who are sick or disabled. I also want you to take a quick note that another 25%, that salmon color, is for self-care. So caregiving for one's own conditions, one's own health, physical, mental, disease state. And so really 75% of those outside the workforce formally are being driven by some type of caregiving concern. Now, as you can see from the right-hand side, the single largest set of drivers of that 50% rather, are having a newborn or a newly adopted child, a child that injured, has a disability, a long-term care need, or just the daily needs of being a homemaker, getting kids to school, to other projects, and then care, the so-called sandwich generation kicks in about the middle of the list when people are taking care of both kids and seniors. Now, another big driver, if we can go to the next slide, please, of the isolation of caregivers from the workforce is cost. And here, if you just look at the blue lines at the bottom, a lot of things in society have become way less expensive over time. Just look at that bottom line. All of us can remember when big screen TVs were huge luxury. Now you have disposable brands of big screen TVs with people like Vizio. But if you advance the slide one more, you'll see that childcare and nursery school costs are among the most consistently growing costs in all costs in the United States. That has the effect of estranging women from the workforce, and that's particularly dangerous for employers on two dimensions. And as this slide shows, what we've seen over time, really over the last 40 years, is an inversion of a historical relationship in terms of who gets advanced degrees in the United States. This shows master's degrees in blue, PhD degrees in that light lemony green. And you can see that women are an absolute majority of both. Women today are also an absolute majority of people in four-year colleges. As a matter of fact, 58% of current four-year college enrollees are women. Now, employers are regularly looking for people with more advanced skills, better grounding in various topics, and often have a bias not animated by a prejudice against non-degree holders, although that has been a problem in our workforce historically, toward people that have advanced degrees. And in the United States, and by the way, this is the case in India, France, UK, Brazil, almost all our peer competitors, women are an absolute majority of people getting those advanced degrees. So the workforce, in terms of people you recruit with a higher ed background, is increasingly female. But there's another important consideration that has to do with the importance of what we call social skills. Go to the next slide, please. Social skills are skills of a type that have to do with the ability to interact with others, go into a familiar group, communicate very effectively, be able to motivate somebody, be able to build a cordial relationship with someone who might be a rival for advancement. And here you can see, in very interesting research done by the Pew Center, the degree to which women exceed men in social skills quotient. So if you look to the left-hand side, that second axis where you see the 40 and the 52, on social skills, women have a 20% plus advantage over men. Now, that is not news to most of the women in the audience today. It's a little bit of a hard message for people like me, but that's a very material gap. And social skills are getting more important for work of all types. Research for everything from CEOs, which I did, to frontline workers, which one of my co-heads of one of our big projects here at Harvard, Professor David Deming, did, show that both compensation and the in jobs and the types of jobs that are growing faster than average in the United States have higher social skills quotients. Why is that? Well, if you think about particularly digital technologies, data-driven technologies, and now AI, a lot of the things that are technical hard skills are being automated. And what's left are the human skills that make somebody efficient and effective in dealing with other types of other assets which are flawed, imperfect, emotional, i.e. other human beings. So on the two most important axes that employers are looking for today, advanced degrees and social skills, women are clearly in the lead. And therefore, it is an imperative for employers to make their work more women-friendly. And as we saw in that pie chart, that means focusing on care. Now, let me go to the next slide, please. One might think this is a theoretical problem alone, but in work I did before COVID and then updated marginally after COVID, what we saw that caregiving obligations drives significant voluntary turnover. What does voluntary turnover mean? What does the phrase mean? Quitting or resigning. We asked workers, had they left one or more jobs in their careers, because they couldn't reconcile the responsibilities they have in caregiving with the obligations of work. And what we found was that on the whole, more than a third had said they had done that at least once. But interestingly, if you took those people who said they had resigned at least once and segmented them by which quartile in their employer they ranked in, a frontline employee all the way to a senior leader, the likelihood of leaving went up with your salary, with your title, with your pay grade, with your responsibilities. So that adds a third consideration to our list for employers. Employers want people with advanced degrees, they want people with good social skills, and presumably they want to keep their top paid talent. And care is driving women who have those degrees, have those social skills disproportionately relative to men, and from senior ranks systematically out of the company, because employers have expectations of workers who are also caregivers that are just too hard to reconcile with their needs and their personal obligations. Does that mean employers being brutal, hard-nosed, nasty, mean-spirited? Of course not. It just means that job design and promotion paths are still firmly rooted in the logic of the 60s and 70s, as opposed to today's workforce, which is more female and has the requirement to tap into the types of skills we were describing earlier. Now, if we go to the next slide, please, here's a list of people who are caregivers who said, what were the biggest challenges they had in reconciling work with their caregiving obligations? And you can see the first two is, and the first column is their first choice. The second column is the combination of their first two choices. That disproportionately, the stress and the time associated with exercising caregiving responsibilities was more than they could handle. So that tells us something about whether or not employers are doing something to relieve that stress and make time more flexible so people can balance those considerations. Now, you remember earlier, I asked you to look at that salmon part of the circle about self-care. Look at what the third driver is. 13% lack of time for self-care. So we think of, in our debate about caregiving, we tend to gravitate to a discussion about taking care of kids. The first three reasons on the list that caregivers leave the workforce, obviously built into the name of your organization, but senior care and self-care are also major contributors to the inability of women to participate fully in the workforce. One last thing I forgot to mention on the previous slide is those rates of departure are almost equal across gender. So highly paid men, you remember 49% overall said in the top quartile they had left. That's true of both men and women. It's not merely a female phenomenon. Next slide, please. So I got very interested in how do we understand the economics of this for employers? And employers may, feel a great deal of affection and affiliation for their workers, but they are companies and governments are economic entities. They're trying to make budgets. They're trying to preserve, grow their company or contain their cost if they're a governmental agency. And what I wanted to understand in more detail is, how is it that caregiving and either the lack of the turnover associated with the need to balance care and work, or an absence of productivity, were effective employer economics? Because employers aren't going to give people more flexibility or pay for better care benefits to feel better about themselves. They're going to do it if the economics make sense to them. So I asked caregivers, if when you got some caregiving support, did it help you miss fewer days of work or be more productive? And 2/3 said yes. Also importantly, did it help you avoid taking a leave of absence or resigning? You see that 30%. That's pretty close to the 34% overall number I found across all four of those quartiles of the workforce. So if you've got your female workforce or your caregiver workforce, you can reduce their turnover by 1/3 by giving better benefits and more accommodations. That's big money for an employer. That's definitely worth the attention. If you can make your workforce significantly more productive, because 64% of the time they're going to be able to work more days or avoid having important meetings postponed or canceled, that's big money. That's worth your time. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what I did was analysis and a piece of work I published this past winter. And here I was trying to answer a challenge that employers have made to me, which is, well, how do we know that a benefit is going to work? And this particular analysis focused on a company called Wealthy. Wealthy, I find a very confusing name because everyone thinks it's like a firm that advises you on your retirement portfolio or something, as opposed to about wellness. But what Wealthy does is provide case services for people who have a significant caregiving event in their family. So the employee is covered to receive this service if, for example, a spouse or a parent or a child gets a serious medical diagnosis. And rather than, since employers kept saying, prove it to me that investing in a service like that is worthwhile, I decided to change the discussion and to say, since I can't prove the goodness, the legitimacy of something you're not prepared to do by the caregiving benefit, until I prove it to you, I'm stuck in a self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't prove something is good unless you're willing to do it. And you're not willing to do it unless I can prove it's good. So let's change the discussion to ask, how good does good have to be? Let's put a reality test against this. This is a little complicated. As I said, you can pull away paper down from my website. But this relates to reducing turnover. And the costs of turnover, as experienced by employer, are a function of, multiplying two variables. What's my turnover rate? How many people are leaving? And what does it cost me to replace them? And depending on how much you make, employers find that the ratio of what someone makes who's left and the cost to replace them kind of follows some normative rules. So the most conservative elements are that line along the bottom. You see 33% of salary to replace. For a very low skilled worker in an entry-level job, that's the minimum. Most people say it's the next line up, 50%. But if you start getting into managerial levels, it often approaches 100%. And for executive levels, 150% or more. So what we calculated here was pick a combination as an employer that you think is right. Let's say you have mostly frontline, low-paid staff. In many, many companies, that turns over rate 50% a year. And if you just go right to the middle of the chart and say, if I could reduce my turnover, which is 50%, by 4 points, and it costs me 33% of salary to replace all those people, the cost of the return I get for providing everybody in the workforce with the Wealthy benefit, you can read on the vertical axis. If you look at that intercept, it's close to 100% payback. And if you talk about reducing those people most likely to turn over, that 49% in the top quartile, now you're talking about the best investment any company would be making in any given year. Hundreds of percent return on investment for giving your employees more reason to stay, reducing turnover, and building alignment and commitment with those workers. The same thing applies on the next slide when we look at improvement in productivity. There you can see, by the way, the percentage of workers who said that using this specific benefit had helped them avoid quitting. So there's that 30% numbers kind of showing up a lot. We'll go to the next slide now, please. Here we look at a much smaller number, which is absenteeism. Because absenteeism doesn't have that hard and fast cost of, oh gosh, I got to go hire somebody. I got to post jobs. I'm going to have to pay Indeed or ZipRecruiter or even a headhunter, lots of money to find me good candidates. So here we use the exact same type of analysis. It's return on the vertical axis, but how many hours per quarter, just hours per quarter, would having the benefit save? So you can see for a caregiver who is missing a day and a half a quarter in that middle line, 12 and a half hours per quarter. If you reduce their turnover materially, once again, you've got a terrific return on investment in the 20s. And if it's only a marginal benefit, if basically you've got somebody who's missing a day or day and a half a year because of caregiving. Well, if you go back to what's really driving people's decision to miss work or to have to skip work, it's much more frequent than that. And I know you know that through your hard work with families and kids. Let's go to the next slide, please. So here you can see, by the way, that almost 70% of workers in the poll I did said they had missed less work because of the benefit. Now here we just ask, what are the types of benefits that workers say they'd really benefit from? And in terms of what they said they would find the most helpful, it's listed on the left-hand side. And you can see in the blue column how many people, how many companies offer that benefit today. So about 51% of companies say we offer flexible scheduling, 50% unpaid leave. You can read the rest for yourself. What's the usage rate in those companies that offer those benefits? That's in the green. So when you offer flexible scheduling, 90% of your workforce engages with that. If you offer paid family medical leave, 43% of employers offer that, almost 60%, 57% of people will make use of it. The amber color on the far right is what percentage of workers would have used the benefit were it available to them. So that's an increment of, if my employer offered it, would I use it? You may look at some of these things and say, it's funny, there's some anomalies between the numbers. Remember that people know what's being offered by their employers, so they have an expectation or a need for something like a caregiving benefit. They may not take a job if it's not offered. So let's go just walk through the logic of here one more time. And we'll go to the last slide, please. So for employers, what we believe is important here at Harvard Business School is they first of all have to understand the overall costs of caregiving and how the economics of benefits work. They have to understand their care demographics. How many people do they have who are caring for kids with chronic illnesses, who have a sandwich generation, who have a two-income household where the calendaring and work schedule constraints of the non-employee adult is inflexible and therefore inflicts a lot of caregiving obligations on you, the person you employ. job descriptions, career paths, managerial incentives, they're all rooted in old logic, certainly a pre-COVID logic, but also a logic of 30, 40 years ago that this is what the job is, this is what it calls for. Your life beyond here isn't my concern, shouldn't be something that I have to take into account. People 30 years ago used to do this job just fine. That just doesn't work anymore. Having a culture where caregiving is legitimized, where leaders talk about it, talk about their own care experiences, how it affected their work and productivity, and if the company wants to help them through, employees through that. And then look at your current caregiving services and get feedback about whether they're any good. A lot of companies confuse what is I'm talking about with like employee information, employee benefit information programs that really have very little impact and very little substantive help. All they do is employee assistance programs where people answer your questions about the benefits you do or do not have. That's not a benefit. That's a reference librarian. We need to really get clear-eyed about what works and what doesn't and why. So Madeline, let me kick it back to you to maybe get some questions and engage some other people.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to have to hold myself back here as I sit in the sandwich generation, receiving tons of text messages from folks saying how much this resonates, because we only have time for a couple of questions, and I need to invite a couple of our Bosses for Babies members to join us in a conversation and Q&A. So Madeline Pumariega is president of Miami-Dade College, the nation's largest institution of higher education, and the first woman to hold that post. She's a former nonprofit CEO, former chancellor of the Florida college system, and has consistently been dedicated to helping young adults attain and succeed in college. And Brian Butler is president and CEO of Vistra Communications, also a member of the board of the U.S. Chamber, a veteran and a very active citizen in Tampa, where he co-founded the initiative CEOs in Schools. So as their faces come up here, Brian, welcome. I just want to ask each of you, and I know we'll have Madeline here in just a second. There you are. Hello. Want to ask each of you just for maybe initial reactions to what you've just heard and a question for Dr. Fuller. Madeline, go ahead.
Okay, didn't know if Brian was going to start. No, I think Dr. Fuller's presentation really is validating, not only as a female leader in education, but what we see among our students. 60% of our students are females. So it's all of his data is so consistent with the chamber report and labor participation. And so I think, to Dr. Fuller, I'd like to ask him, he touched upon it a little bit, but how do employers and how do our partners on this call strike the right balance? Because we know that it's not just the childcare aspect, the sandwich generation, Madeline, as you just spoke about, life-work balance, and oftentimes the oversteering is remote work. And the remote work, really what we're seeing is, and especially for women who you see the social skills are so important for us to thrive. What's that right balance for our partners to think about creating that to keep not only attract women into the workplace, but more importantly, support them and make sure that they thrive and stay in the workplace? I have young leaders who'll tell me sometimes it's more expensive to come to work than to stay because of the childcare. So what are those variables that we could be thinking about in terms of policy and practice?
Well, I think the first is to really understand that you have much more economically at stake than you may think. These conversations you're having with your workers are not just about, are you trying to be accommodating? Are you trying to be kind? Are you trying to be a family-friendly organization? There's hard economics on the table. And I'm not saying that I want to turn the whole conversation into a kind of Ebenezer Scrooge-like conversation, but there's there are cultural stakes and there are economic stakes. The second thing is that the vast majority of workers, they don't have exotic, desperate needs, where they're expecting the employer to do 7 things for them once. They have things, they're about 8 or 10 very specific things. I'll just give a quick illustration. School drop-off. Who's dropping off the kids at school? And is that going to put me in the teeth of the worst commute so that I'm going to rush to get the kids to school, then panic because it's going to take me 75 minutes to get to the office, and I'm going to be a minimum of 15 minutes late. Why do I have to be there at 9 o'clock, given my job? Is it okay for me to arrive somewhere closer to 10, and either through remote work or working later because my significant other or spouse is doing pickup, or grandma or whomever else? So these are, understand what the individual actually needs. A lot of it is quite benign. The second thing, and I'll leave it at that, is that you have to think in terms not just of people, but of processes. It's processes that really drive people's schedules. So letting the people that run processes, managers, design their own solutions, as opposed to come up with these ironclad, this is the way, these are the rules. Because a lot of managers will know, yeah, we have the weekly meeting and it's just fine if it's all remote. Or if we do it once a month, it's fine, as opposed to everyone's got to be in for every meeting. So it requires a little more investment in customization. But what you get back in terms of retention, productivity, and commitment to the organization makes it really a very straightforward position.
Thank you very much. Brian, what's on your mind?
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Fuller, for sharing your research. And I so much appreciate the tie from not making this just a challenge about education, but also providing a business case for our businesses to better understand and embrace. I did not understand this until I really got involved with the program we started called CEOs in Schools, where I actually spent time on site more than just 1 hour at a time. And I challenged business leaders to spend, to come into our schools and to get involved in a more meaningful way by being there for a full day. And that has really is doing some things that I think that change this community. But I use that as a setup to my question for you. You mentioned that so much of our work skills and design of work was founded in the 60s and probably has not changed much. Is there a bigger issue here? Is there a clash of culture that is prohibiting businesses to think differently about how to modify these schedules to meet today and tomorrow's demands?
I think it's a great question, Brian. The short answer is yes. If you are a very senior leader in an organization, you often manage in many of the ways that you observe your bosses manage you. Not every one of you might have had a terrible boss you didn't like and respect, but you grew up not only emulating very effective bosses, but living by a different set of rules. I don't know what the analogy of the sports, but a lot of people grew up in what we would think of as the dead ball era in baseball, or when you had to play tennis with a wooden racket or something like that. And also you put that together with that many leaders, particularly men in organizations, grew up in a more, I'll call it traditional culture. And it's been a while since they had to worry about school pickup. And, their kids didn't grow up in a social media world with internet where they can get in all sorts of trouble if they're left at home with devices. They didn't, they just a little bit removed from it. And so when you start challenging with them on things like your job descriptions contribute to half of your highest paid quartile workers leaving regularly. You know, is that the workers' problem or is that the job descriptions problem? You know, you've got people for lower wage workers who your supervisor in your retail site knows is an outstanding worker who's got a bad car. And they've been late for work 3 days this month, and by rule, you have to terminate them because the rule says 3 latenesses in a month, you're fired, or 6 in a year, you're fired. Even though that supervisor is saying this is crazy. So you have to revisit policies, you have to revisit job descriptions, and the best way you can do it is simply ask and listen to what people say about how their life actually works, not the stylized way the job description or the stylized way the experience of that senior executive remembers it, and make it clear that discussing the totality of their life is perfectly okay. That you don't want it. You had to take care of your mother-in-law too. You had a kid who was ADHD or special needs or had terrible asthma or whatever it is, and you remember those days, and you know, you look back now at, you know, you're amazed you got through it. Now I want to help you get through it. And companies that signal that and demystify the whole discussion and make it legitimate and acceptable and safe, get a great return in terms of engagement, productivity, and commitment from workers.
Let me ask a follow-up to that, if I may. And this really has to do with the state of Florida and the size of our businesses. You know, and we have many businesses that are in the 5 to 10 employee range,
Yep.
5 to 15 employee range. What is your advice for those businesses different than, let's say, the enterprise that my friend Madeline runs, that she's probably got, you know, over 1,000 employees in the workplace?
Well, first of all, Madeline, I'm sure it's true of both Madelines, but Madeline, the educator, runs one of the outstanding community colleges in the United States. Yes. Full stop. It's a huge resource for Florida. Yes. Small employers, of course, have a couple of real structural demands. One is usually small means owner operated, or the owner is present a lot, even if they're not operating business day to day. And if you're spending money on a benefit or on overtime for a worker because another worker is unreliably able to show up for work, that's money not out of Walmart's pocket or Costco's pocket or Home Depot's pocket. That's out of my pocket. The good news is, you know, the workers. And so what we find very often is that those smaller businesses really do value stability in the workforce because they took a long time to get a workforce that's committed and capable and productive, and they're very loath to do things. So I think that here the role of social service agencies and states become really important. There's a whole movement, you know, among employers in various cities in the United States to work together. The original version of this was called The Source. It started in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with local smaller and mid-sized providers bounded together to finance some advisors for their workers because they kept bumping into problems HR couldn't handle or they couldn't handle as an owner operator. For example, I'm about to get evicted. I've got a good worker about to get evicted, or I've got someone who's got a returning citizen from incarceration. How do I manage that? They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And they were losing workers. But what they could do is fund having caseworkers available to their employees who knew what the state programs were, the city programs were, the local charities were, that focused in solving those tough life issues. And that led to a big improvement in retention, driving those favorable economics again.
That is really wonderful. And there's so much here that's resonating. You can see it in our active chat. Believe it or not, we are out of time for this portion. So thank you so much, Dr. Fuller, Madeline, and Brian for being here. And no doubt this is a conversation that keeps going. I think it's interesting as I'm sitting here reflecting, this idea of the social skills quotient is probably one that resonates very much with our audience. And as we always talk about in early education, that's where so many of those social skills are formed. And those educators do such important work. So as we transition to the next segment, thank you again to our speakers. We know this conversation was a little different than our past keynotes at Built to Thrive, and we hope that after hearing this, you will join us in celebrating that our Bosses for Babies network has reached more than 80 CEOs now across our state, who together employ more than 100,000 Floridians. Next up, we have our first video feature of the program on another way to support families. Here at the movement, we understand how critically important it is to ensure that those who raise children have a network of support. And as we often joke, parenthood does not come with a guidebook or instruction manual, and it can be emotionally exhausting and daunting at the same time, as we know it is so joyful and fulfilling. So when it feels like there are more questions than answers, where do we turn? Parents don't have to go it alone. Healthy Families in Polk County is a good place to start. Let's take a look.
Healthy Families, we are a home visiting program. We come out into the home and walk alongside the families. It's saving lives, it's saving babies, it's giving hope to families that may not have had hope in the beginning. As we go in and navigate through life with them, it brings out the best in them. It shows them who they can really be.
Sometimes we can be lost in the experiences that we experience, like discouragement and not knowing what's the next step or the next chapter in your life. So I feel like this program had brought some clarity to that.
We help them develop goals, developmental skills with all the children, not just the one child that they're pregnant with. So we try to incorporate all of the family.
We do assessments on them, finding out what risk factors that they have, find out what their needs are, and then we go into the home and build our curriculum around that with education, resources, and services.
It started with the pregnancy, then it started with birth, then it transitioned on to newborn phase, and then after navigating the first few months, then she started to focus on me and my partner. Because to have a healthy baby, you have to have a healthy relationship with who you're with. We have to nurture these aspects. A lot of times we take on all these different roles, and it's hard to juggle it because you're being pulled in multiple directions. So to take time out to each title that you carry and nurture each title that you carry, then that's going to make a bigger impact on your child, because now your child sees that you're healthy mentally, So it passes on to them as well.
It's a voluntary program. We go out and we bring curriculum along with us. Curriculum from birth to 5, wherever the child may be, their age range. We talk about some mental health things as well, what mom is feeling, what the family is feeling. We talk about budgeting, things that they may have challenges with.
It has made my life easier. It has helped me so much through pregnancy with my kids. Any questions that I have, I was just depressed in a way and upset and sick all the time. So that probably, since I was feeling all nauseous and vomiting all the time and crying, it was terrible.
So how did your baby do her first day of school? She liked it? Was she excited?
I'm able to connect with somebody, like for me it was Miss Rebecca. I'm able to talk to her about anything and she can help me get the help that I need. And I think this is very important for so many different women, because a lot of women can't do certain things. They can't go out, or it's difficult, and they just need somebody there to help them, and this program gives you that.
It teaches mom how to make healthy brain connections. We're teaching them to talk to your baby, to touch your baby, to hug your baby. If your baby's crying, you go to them right away, which all have healthy brain connections. Because we're in the home, it helps them to know that this is what my baby needs, this is what I should do. Now it's time to feed the baby, or, you know, at 6 months you introduce them to solid foods or to like jar foods and things like that. So just give them basic information to keep the child whole and healthy.
I've appreciated everything that they've done for me, and it has been a blessing for us, for my kids. I got my oldest to be potty trained thanks to this program. They gave me everything that I needed and different types of ways to do it. If I needed anything, like if I needed a car seat or if I needed diapers or anything that I would need, they would bring it with no problems. And Miss Rebecca would always bring books and little toys for the girls to play with.
We're in survival mode sometimes, and we don't always give our kids what they need emotionally. I know we're eager to teach them their numbers, their colors, their alphabets, but that emotional piece is important as well. And I think moms and families are coming along very well with learning that I have to parent the emotion of my child as well as the intellect of my child.
Miss Mia has helped me with writing my business plan and, you know, navigating all of that. She's also helped me personally with, you know, my mental health, especially in that early stage of becoming a new mom. She's helped my relationship. She's helped, like, given advice for, you know, different ways to grow as a couple. I just feel like God placed her there when I needed her the most.
I'm just here to be your cheerleader. The goals that you have, the things that you want to do for yourself, the things that you want to do for your children, that's what I'm here for. Just to help you along, just to cheer you on. And once they get that and they understand that, hey, I finally have some support. I have someone in my corner for a change. Then they open up. And you just see this blossoming right before your eyes. It almost makes you want to cry.
It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you've seen. It doesn't even matter what you've done. You can start now and be successful moving forward.
And all they needed was a cheerleader.
I love that. So you heard that Healthy Families is a free voluntary home visitation program. It's in all of our 67 counties. Also, Healthy Start is another one of those, and we're seeing a lot of things in the chat about Nurse Family Partnership and others. You know, the home visiting programs do a lot to promote positive parenting and work to reduce the negative child outcomes, including abuse and neglect. And this is just one example of those that are available to every mother and father in this state. Parents benefit from having someone to talk to and guide them in making the best decisions for their families. And we know there's a direct connection to early learning. When we talk about early education, it's the nurturing, stimulating interactions and care that happens in the 0 to 5 years, no matter where that happens. And when parents are supported, they can better contribute to that early learning. Next up, we hear from a South Florida father, one with a whole lot of responsibility coming up. Daniel Perez represents District 116 in Miami-Dade County. That's Sweetwater for the locals. And he was chosen by his peers to be the next Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives. He wasn't able to join us live today, but I got to chat with him last week about life, about family, about early childhood. And here is what he shared.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be able to talk to your members. My name is Daniel Perez. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the incoming Speaker of the House in the state of Florida, and I'll have the blessing of being the Speaker of the House until 2026. Me personally, outside of politics, I'm 37 years old, so I'm one of the younger speakers in the history of the state of Florida, although not the youngest. But I have 3 children, so this is a Zoom that actually works out for me because I'm in it as we speak. I have a daughter who just turned 6 years old this weekend. Her name is Camila. If you ask her, she said it was her 16th birthday because she's convinced she's a teenager, but she's one of a kind. I have a son who's 4 years old. Well, actually, today at 5 o'clock is his first soccer game, so bear with me. I'm not very patient because I want him to go out there and basically be the next Messi, and I don't think we're there yet. And then my youngest is 10 months old, and her name is Paulina. She's the sweetest of the bunch, but she's 10 months, so she's still building. She's still building that personality. But we're in it right now, and I think for purposes of this conversation, I probably have. I'll probably be one of the speakers that have the most relevance to the issues before us today. Yeah, all of my children have surprised me in different parts of their young life. I think children, that's part of the joy of having children. You never know what to expect. And what has surprised me most, I think, is the evolution at such a young age. I have noticed that one, starting school, and I say school purposefully, it's not a daycare, starting school early has, I think, ramped up the speed of the evolution of my children. It's natural, though we say we don't do it. It's human nature to compare your children to others. It's just, there's no way around that. I've noticed that the ability of my children is substantially more because we started at 1 year old, believe it or not. So as long as my kids are walking, we put them into school, a Spanish immersion school nonetheless, but still it's about the developing of their mind. And I have seen that where we may not think they're listening, they actually are. They repeat everything. They're always watching. And that leads me to really the answer to the question, which is what has surprised me the most. I don't know why, but specifically with the two girls, both of these very small children, they're always watching me. I don't know if it's because I'm the father. I don't know what it is. My wife tells me it's because I'm the easiest man in the world to predict. And I just think that they're onto me. But what has surprised me the most is the alertness of my children at such a young age. They are very present, even when we think they're not. And look, not many people know this about me, but I'm the oldest of three. I'm 37. My sister's 33. My brother's 31. My brother's severely autistic, and you're seeing the prevalence of autism increasing by the day. More prevalent in boys and girls, but of course, unfortunately, more often today than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But the only way that we can help these children live a purposeful life is early intervention. And so, and I say that because it's early intervention isn't only about what society would call normal children, but it's also about the developmentally disabled. And I think that the developmentally disabled world is one that we need to pay more attention to. But you need to start paying attention to it by early intervention to understand the abilities or disabilities of your children. So I've always been a huge advocate for early intervention. What I'm most proud of over the last several years, and I would say even the last 7 years, which is how long I've been in the legislature, is every single year we have increased our funding for K through 12 education, higher education as well, but it's a different topic for a different day. But early education, K through 12, our VPK programs, every single year that I've been in the legislature, we've been able to increase the funding. So that tells me that we realize the importance, but two, we're also putting our money where our mouth is. We're a believer in the cause, and we want to make sure that next generation has all the resources necessary to succeed. My parents always taught me that part of my life goal is to make sure that I find my replacement or replacements in my life and that they live a better life than I did. And that's our goal. We want our children to be more successful. And however you define success doesn't have to be money. Success can be a passion. But as long as the next generation is more successful than we are, then we've accomplished our goal as parents. That's what my parents always taught me. And, I think we've been able to do that as a state legislature. As a reminder, legislature is what writes the budget. We create the laws, and the legislature has done a good job of supporting the cause of not just children today, but children tomorrow. And I hope to be able to be in a position over the next couple of years to continue the importance of pushing that cause forward. I would tell you, if I had one message to the viewers, to the listeners, to the audience, which isn't just teachers, but everyone that is a part of this conversation, I would tell you, thank you for what you do, number one. I think you guys do God's work. I understand the pay may not be the highest, but the impact is. The impact that you're providing to our communities is perpetual. And I would love for everyone to know that it doesn't go unnoticed. We notice it, we appreciate it, we hear you. So I would tell you, reach out to your state representatives as much as you can. There isn't a call that we kind of push to the side. We always take everything into consideration. Your opinion matters. You guys are the ones in the fields. So keep us posted. We hope to support you and have your back in any way that we can, and we'll base that based on what your input is to us. So definitely keep us posted on what your thoughts, questions, and concerns are. But thank you for the time to let me speak to you all. I appreciate it. I hope it's not the last time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker Designate. That the next House Speaker chose to spend some time with us is a reflection of his leadership and priorities. And your task now is to take his advice, contribute your suggestions for the changes that you want to see. If you don't know who represents you in the House and Senate in Tallahassee, look it up. There's a link in the chat, and write them a note. We don't all need to bombard the speaker. It can be so powerful when you're reaching your own representative where you vote. So speaking of voting, don't forget that we are in the middle of an election year when 120 seats are up in the Florida House, as well as 20 of the 40 Senate seats. They're all up for election. And these are the leaders who will make the policy and funding decisions on the issues you care about. So we've put together a 2024 voter guide that helps with all the practical details you need to participate in the election. We invite you to explore the guide, share it with your friends, your colleagues, and parents in your programs. And for now, I want to pull on one of the threads from the Speaker Designate's comments, a strong interest in early intervention and special needs, and bring up another legislative champion in Tallahassee. Representative Robin Bartleman represents District 103. That's Weston, Southwest Ranches, Pembroke Pines. It so represents in the Florida House. She's a former teacher and assistant principal, and she has proposed and passed some pretty important legislation touching children and families already in her first 2 terms. Welcome, Representative.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I enjoy listening to all the participants.
Yes, thank you. So the area of special needs is one that is really important to you. Can you just start by telling us why?
Well, I started my career actually as a special education teacher. For those of you in Miami, I worked for Bertha Abbas, and I taught students with severe emotional disabilities for a number of years. And then I went on to become an assistant principal in Liberty City at Ponciana Park Elementary, where at that time we had a very large ESE center. So I have a bachelor's and master's in special education, and I see firsthand how important it is to differentiate instruction and meet the needs of our students.
Awesome. So we've worked with you quite a bit. A couple of years ago, you proposed the bill that expanded kid care eligibility. Last year, you brought forward a bill to change the way early learning programs support children with special needs. What were you looking to do with that bill? What would it have changed?
Well, this bill came about after a meeting with a parent named Trinae and her son Logan. So what she brought to me, her situation, which involved her child being expelled from 6 early learning centers because of his behavior issues, because of his developmental delays. He does have autism. And so the private providers were not equipped to help him. So that really disjointed his education. And then finally, when he was able to get into a pre-K program with the public school system, she found relief. I have a place to put him. This is great. And you just had the speaker talk about, employment and how we need to get people in the workforce. Well, we know that parents with students with disabilities have a hard time keeping employment. And so jobs, you can't punch out at 2 o'clock at the end of the day. So once she got him placed, she had an even harder time to get him into an after-school program to continue that day. So I sat down with Howard Bacalauer from the Broward County Early Learning Coalition, Aaron Smeltzer, a lot of advocates, because I always like to give credit where credit is due. I was like, how do we fix this? How do we make sure? So the first thing we did in the bill, which was the most important, was we found that children in early learning centers actually have 3 times the expulsion rate of K through 12 combined. That's a huge issue. And so that when they're getting passed from center to center and don't have consistency, and it doesn't just have to be a child with developmental delays, it could be a child with behavior problems, they need support. So under ELC, if you have a child with special needs, you get increased funding for that child. But there is no state requirement for training for those teachers. So the first provision of the bill required training, and it was 10 additional hours, and we worked with the private providers. So it would be within the framework that already exists to get that training. So that when the student comes in, they have the skill set to help that student. And then think about that. That additional skill level helps them with all students. The second thing it did was expanded access for students with disabilities to be prioritized, and for infants and toddlers. And the third, it extended that funding for aftercare programming. So based on this one parent situation who actually, I'm sure she reflects numerous parents across the state of Florida, it's small changes, and we're bringing it back next year. We actually got to put it in a package and it passed the House floor, but sometimes you run out of time, and we're going to bring it back next year. So it'll really address those issues, because I'm preaching to the choir here. You know that early intervention is the key. It sets the foundation and the groundwork, the pre-literacy skills, the emotional skills needed to be successful in kindergarten. And so making sure those students get those services is paramount.
Excellent. Well, you've got a lot of love coming in the chat. If you see me looking this way, it's all of the people saying how wonderful Representative Bartleman is, and cheering you on addressing this issue. I also love what you said, that when you train teachers in supporting children with special needs or with behavioral difficulties, it actually helps all children. You know, it helps all children to have that environment in the classroom where everyone is contributing. And sometimes those techniques work really well with all children too. So as you preach to the choir, how can this audience support you when you bring this back next year?
Well, I am definitely filing the bill again next year, and I would love for you to send letters of support. We'll get a bill number. If you have any ideas or any additional suggestions for changes within the bill, any different bills. This is my second pre-K bill. I changed the pupil progression plan 2 sessions ago for pre-K students. So send them my way. I'm at robin.bartleman@myfloridahouse.gov. I'll also put my cell phone number in the chat and that email so that you all can contact me, because look, there are so many things we need to do. And every bill that I have passed, and I have passed 12 bills in some form or another in the last 4 years, they all came out of situations in my community and from hearing constituents and what they needed to be, what needed to be changed to help them. From kid care to the pupil progression to Mia's Law, all of those things came from situations in my community, and that's what we're here to do. So I'm excited to hear from the experts in this chat and the parents to tell me, what can we do to help you? And I see that my aide already put everything in the chat. She's so good. Thank you, Savannah. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 1 minute left. You mentioned pupil progression plan, which it's a triple P that people might not know exactly. Tell us more about that, Wynn. I know it's one you're really proud of.
Okay, so the pupil progression plan changes. Pupil progression plan is what governs students moving from K through 12, how they're promoted. In the state of Florida, you're retained at the 3rd grade if you don't pass the FSA, but if you have a disability and you're retained once prior to kindergarten, you have a good cause exemption, so you're not retained twice before you're 8. Well, I had a situation with a little girl named Anna in my district. She's a student with Down syndrome, and her parent actually chose to retain her in a pre-K program. Now, if you think about that, that makes so much sense, because a child with a developmental disability is just that their development is delayed, and she did not have the prerequisite skills needed to meet what she needed to do in kindergarten. And we know kindergarten is not our kindergarten. Kindergarten to me is like, if you look at Piaget's theory of development, so developmentally inappropriate, but that's what we do in the state. So they have to read, they have to have all these prerequisite skills before they come in. So what we did was, she didn't want her daughter, the mother didn't want her daughter to have to be retained in pre-K. She was retained in pre-K and then retained twice before the age of 8. And there are huge social implications for children when they're retained twice. We know the studies and what it does. So what we did was, we cemented in the pupil progression plan that the pre-K retention can count for the good cause promotion. It's a small change, but it's huge. It's huge for students with developmental disabilities. It gives parents a choice, and it makes sense to give them that extra year of pre-K so they're ready and have all those skills needed for kindergarten. So I'm very proud of that bill, and we know that it's going to help thousands of kids across the state. And it gives, it just educationally, it's just a sound decision a parent can make. So I'm glad to offer that to them without risking having to be retained 3 times before the 3rd grade.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising up this message that when you call your representatives, they really do answer and they will find ways to solve your issues. So the speaker designate invited us to call him. You're sharing examples of constituents who did call you and bills that were passed and bills that we will help you to pass next year. So the chat has already joined me in thanking you, saying that you are the best and many other things. So thank you so much,
Thank
Rob,
you.
for
Thank
being
you.
with us.
I appreciate all of you. Thank you for all the heroes out there and everything you do. Keep advocating.
All right. So the challenges of dealing with increased rates of autism diagnoses or other special needs and behavioral issues has definitely been something that we've been hearing all around the state, just like the representative mentioned. And it's especially encouraging to know that our leaders are focused on these issues. As we acknowledge a good bill on special needs that didn't quite make it last year, we also want to share some good news of what did pass. So the largest increase in early learning funding in 2 decades, bringing the number to 1.7 billion that we invest in early learning in our state. Increased reimbursement rates for school readiness with $46 million to support it. Extended access for families enrolled in the school readiness program to address the fiscal cliff with $23 million to support it. Passage of a new child care tax credit that helps employers play a role in addressing child care affordability with $5 million available each year for the next 3 years. That's a lot of millions. And switching gears now, I want to share one more. So we turn our attention now to Florida's Early Learning Roadmap, a very special document that we released last fall, developed with the participation of nearly 1,000 Floridians, parents, educators, owners and operators of early learning programs, law enforcement, business leaders, and more. The roadmap was developed in 3 phases. First, we went around the state having conversations with parents and educators in small groups, talking about their experiences with early learning and asking about their hopes and dreams for their children and their families. Then we brought in some of those proximity experts, those who have direct experience and knowledge of the early learning system, together with system leaders and the policy experts in a statewide steering committee. And that was the group charged with taking everything that we heard in our listening tour and turning it into recommendations responding to that. And last, we brought those draft recommendations again all across the state, hosting community meetings to learn what we got right, what folks wanted to see changed. So the final roadmap with 41 recommendations across 4 key components is truly the work of extensive collaboration. That collaboration continues today as we have a statewide advisory board that is charged with prioritizing the implementation of these recommendations. And today I'm pleased to announce that we've got new wind in our sails to continue this work. Helios Education Foundation has given a grant of $1 million to support the implementation of Florida's early learning roadmap. This will support the continued work of our advisory board, now working across 4 different working groups that have identified short and long-term priorities and, of course, legislative asks, and will also help us to build momentum with partners across the state who are networked locally and championing the roadmap in their own communities. In keeping with the theme of roadmap, we call these our community drivers because they are leading their community on the road to the recommendations that they have prioritized. So we're really happy to share this $1 Million Day with all of you. We've said from the beginning that the recommendations in the roadmap are a recipe and not a menu because each one is crucial for making the changes that we want to see to meet the needs of parents, children, and the people who educate them. So thank you to the Helios Education Foundation again for recognizing the importance of this work and helping us to accelerate the pace of change on early education in Florida. Back to the roadmap, the beauty of this effort is in the diversity of Floridians who join together to make change. And I can think of no better way to showcase this work than to let you meet some of the people involved. For our next panel, Faces of Florida's Early Learning Roadmap, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Vanessa McCrae, to moderate. Vanessa is our first director of community engagement at the movement and a dedicated road warrior who has covered so much of the state already in her first 9 months. So her face will already be familiar to many of you, and I turn it over to you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Madeline. It has truly been a pleasure to not only be a part of the tremendous work being done for our youngest learners and their families here in Florida, but to be a part of the team here at the movement, as well as carry the roadmap throughout the state. Next up, we have 5 special guests today who represent the faces of Florida's early learning roadmap. 4 of them serve on our roadmap advisory board and 1 as a community driver, and they are all implementing roadmap recommendations in their own capacities. First, I have Simone McDaniel. She is a state program director and addiction therapist by trade. She's a former preschool teacher and the mother of a bright and beautiful 5-year-old girl.
Good morning.
I have Dawn Montecalvo, who is the president and CEO of Guadalupe Center in Immokalee, Florida, where she is dedicated to providing quality early learning education, as well as ensuring that all of our children are ready for kindergarten.
Morning.
We have Dr. Herman Knopf, who is a senior research scientist at the University of Florida, Anita Zucker Center for Excellence in Early Childhood Studies. Herman is also a father. One of his first jobs was actually as a teacher in an early learning classroom. So he brings more than 20 years of experience to our field now.
Morning.
We have Carrie Miller, who serves as Chancellor for Early Learning, directing Florida's Department of Education Division of Early Learning. She is also a former elementary teacher and reading coach and has served our state in many capacities to improve literacy and just overall achievement for all of our students.
Good morning.
And last but not least, I have Diana Santangelo, who is Director of Community Foundation Tampa Bay and leads Thrive by 5 Tampa Bay. I would like to announce that Thrive by 5 Tampa Bay is our first official roadmap community driver. Yay.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here.
Thank you all for being here. I'd like to start with a question for all of you. Can you all take 1 minute and share your why for the work that you do in early childhood? Simone.
Good morning again. My wife for working in early childhood, I actually fell into it in 2003 and just fell in love with working with children and being able to educate them. I worked at a local school here that specialized with special needs children. And I saw how those children came out so well educated, and now those children now are at University of Florida, becoming astronauts and scientists and things like that. So just working in the education field was probably the highlight of my younger years, and now that I have a young child, doing the same thing with her education.
Herman.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one, I think that we're all here because we recognize that early childhood is a critically important time in children's development. That the experiences and context that children live and grow in early in life have a profound impact on their life trajectories, the adults they'll become, and ultimately the success that they'll be able to achieve. I've been a classroom teacher, program director, teacher education instructor, and now a researcher. In all of these roles, my focus has been on improving the circumstances and experiences for children, families, and the educators that are actively working to support them.
Thank you. Carrie.
Hey, good morning again. My path is a little unique and a little different than probably a number of the folks on this call, but I did start as an elementary educator, became a literacy coach. My passion was really about supporting teachers and mastering their craft to effectively teach all children to read by the end of third grade. So that's really where my career began, and became very passionate about. Did a lot of work in literacy world, if you will, and learned very quickly that starting in kindergarten was way too late. And so I've been blessed with an opportunity to lead efforts with unbelievably smart people at the Visionary Learning and our early learning coalitions across the state to really put that laser-like focus earlier, right? And really focusing on our youngest learners, ensuring we're preparing for them to enter kindergarten ready for school. And we do that in a number of ways, right? We've got to support families, right? Ensuring we're supporting families to become economically self-sufficient while we're providing high quality care and education to their kiddos to prepare them to enter kindergarten ready for school. So my background's a little bit unique and different, but grateful to be in this role in improving outcomes for children starting as early as possible.
Diana.
Hi,
everyone. Well, my path is a little different as well, too. Interestingly enough, I typically worked with teenagers and youth. So I started actually abroad teaching English language learners. I taught about 10 years of high school. Always loved high schoolers, moved down to Miami-Dade, see lots of friends on the call, and worked with United Way and got into a space of youth development work and youth violence prevention, and worked with incredible partners and incredible youth. And my sister will force me to add, I also took this position to be closer to her in Tampa Bay, which is also somewhat true. But really, honestly, all of the work that I've done in the space of youth development and violence prevention, when you just look back at it, we all know that why can't we help earlier? Why are we waiting until now? So when we look back and we look at these early years, it's been a really neat experience for me to be able to shift right to the beginning. How do we provide supports to families? How do we make sure that we wrap our arms around the entire family and that they're ready to rock and roll for kindergarten?
All right, and Dawn.
Well, I guess my path is even more different. Not an educator like so many on the panel and on this call, but I have personally and professionally seen how education can change lives and break the cycle of poverty. My mother, English was a second language for my mother. She only had a third grade education. My father dropped out of school after eighth grade after his mom had died. They both worked very hard to raise the family, keep a roof over our head. But education really was the key for me going to college and to grad school to break that cycle of poverty. Some of I have a brother that did not happen, and he's still living in poverty because he did not have the education. But in my work now, I use my professional skills, my marketing skills to help empower other people to support and help families so that they can get the education. And early learning is where it has to start. It needs to be from birth and that brain development. And I'm very excited to be able to help that work and empower people to support it.
What great passion you all have for the work that you do. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. So getting back to Florida's early learning roadmap, the experiences and dreams of parents and educators are at the core of our recommendations and our implementation plan. Simone, as a parent representative on our Roadmap Advisory Board, can you share how your family has navigated early learning resources and what has led to choices you've made in using the system?
So as a single parent of my one daughter, I explored several different childcare options. Being that I come from childcare, I realized how expensive it is. And on my single income, it was just not feasible. So I ended up putting her in a private home sitter that was affordable. And then eventually utilizing the ELC program to have her assessed and put into a VPK program. And even with me having a job promotion, I still did not have enough income to put her into a daycare where they provided VPK. So the school that I put her in was a Title I, which meant that the VPK was all day up until, when normal school hours end. And she's been thriving ever since.
Well, thank you, Simone. I'm pretty sure there are many parents and families that can identify with the process that you've had to go through. The different funding streams and programs that you mentioned through ELC, such as VPK, School Readiness, Head Start, Early Head Start, those are all they all represent the policies and investments that our state makes in early learning. So, Don, with that said, what is the focus of the Roadmap Advisory Board as we look ahead to our next legislative session?
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm very honored to be part of the Roadmap Advisory Board because it's an incredible group of people. And with all the recommendations that came out of the roadmap, what we really want to focus right now is on school readiness eligibility. One of the prime recommendation was to move toward a fully funded quality early learning system that supports the early brain development of all children birth age to 5. The system for early learning funding is broken. It's not sustainable. We focus on access, affordability, and quality. But to get quality, you have to pay your teachers more. You have to invest in your teachers, which then raises the cost to parents. So if you're a nonprofit organization like mine, I have to fundraise more to pay the teachers more, to get the tools to help the teachers to get that quality education so our children are school ready. But if you are a for-profit organization, you're going to raise your parent fees. Parents are the state says parents shouldn't pay more than 7% of their income for early learning. They're paying over 27%. So school readiness funding right now helps lower income families that are making less than 150% of the federal poverty level. The challenge now is with the increase of the minimum wage in Florida, people are on that fiscal cliff that Madeline mentioned before, that 150 to 200%. They're making a little bit more money, but they still can't afford quality early learning. So it's a vicious cycle that we're having. So the advisory board and our PR and awareness committee is focusing on educating not just the policymakers, but the community on the need for quality early childhood education, starting at birth, not just VPK, because we need to get to our children earlier, and what the costs are, and how do we get more funds from the state and from the federal government to support our families.
Thanks, Don. Yes, that comes with the mindset shift of the importance of early learning and the importance of it for all of us. One of the guiding principles of our work with the roadmap has been that it takes all of us. So our recommendations do go beyond legislative action. Herman, can you tell us more about the priorities of the early education workforce group that you sit on?
Yes. I want to begin by just thanking the organization, tactics, and strategies that the Florida Children's Movement has used to ensure that we have broad stakeholder engagement in our advisory groups and in our work groups. And, as an example, within the early childhood educator work group, we have practicing classroom teachers, we have program directors, we have childcare owners, in addition to other researchers, advocates, and agency personnel and leadership that are helping us talk through the primary issues facing our early care and education workforce, and have actively identified, I think, some important goals and some specific activities that we're recommending that we take on as a state to improve the supports that we have for our early care and education workforce. The workforce is primarily focused on working to elevate the importance of early childhood educators so that they're publicly recognized as essential personnel that support a robust and thriving economy. In addition to that, we want to work to edify early educators through our words and our deeds to make sure that they know that they are vital to the community and that it is their work that results in a healthy and prosperous environment that is supportive of children and families. In support of those broader aims, we've identified 4 action priorities. First is to increase paid professional days for educators, recognizing that all of the additional education requirements that we see coming through a lot of the legislation aren't often paid work for the early care and education workforce. And for a workforce that is working very hard, diligently to support the needs of the children and the families in their classrooms, is that when they're out of the classroom learning additional skills, it's important that we find ways to compensate that time. Second is that we want to increase the number and the reliability of trainers and observers that are using the classroom assessment scoring system, which is a key measure of quality being implemented in the state of Florida. And we want to make sure that teachers and program administrators truly understand what they should do and the kinds of practices they should be using to perform well and that kind of observational assessment. But we also want to make sure that all of the trainers that are providing information to teachers and directors are providing consistent information that they can reliably build upon to improve the quality of services that are offered. Our third action priority is to support the development and implementation of an informal pathway of professional advancement for early childhood educators. Is that many of our early care and education educators and teachers that are working in the field are not engaged in with college or a university or state college to cultivate the skills, but they are actively working to learn how to do their jobs better through informal workshops, through engagement with coaches and other personnel that work with them in their schools. And it's important for us as a state to recognize that learning and accomplishment so that we can continue to support professional growth over time among the workforce. And finally, the last action priority that we've identified is to work to expand wage incentive programs for the early care and education workforce. It's widely known that they are among the lowest paid teachers that are working directly with children and families to support growth and learning and development. And as a result, we have a high teacher turnover rate. We find it oftentimes difficult to recruit new folks into this line of work. And we're hopeful and optimistic that if we were to identify better ways and systems for compensating personnel, we'll be able to attract and retain a robust teaching workforce to support our youngest kids and their families. I think I got it.
Thank you, Herman. Yes, the compensation, respect, professional development, recruitment and retention, all of that is so vital to our workforce. Also to ensure that our young learners are having the impactful learning experiences they should be. And whether that be in a family childcare home setting, a childcare center, or similar, we also love the idea of parent choice and allowing the parent to decide what best fits the needs of their children and their families. So with that said, Carrie, you were one of our guest speakers earlier this year on the Future Call, and you mentioned an early learning portal that will roll out this year. I'm excited that it's up and running. Can you just share with us how this portal works and the benefits of having such a resource for our families?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, a new Florida statute was established through passage of House Bill 1 that occurred during the 2023 legislative session. And it required the department to create and deploy an online forward-facing early learning provider search that integrates with an online portal for K-12. So it's one online portal for families to search and find the best school or childcare that best meets their child's needs and their family's needs. So the online portal provides families with real-time searchable information about childcare openings, the tuition and fees for said childcare, the curriculum that's being utilized, as well as a number of other things like we use program assessment, we use class in the state of Florida, so the scores that those childcare providers receive as it relates to the quality of teacher-child interactions that are occurring, openings, and just other services offered as it relates to what our childcare provider can provide. Most recently, we have we have a soft launch that took place in August of this particular portal. It's got a name. It's called My Florida Schools, and I can drop the link so you can access information about My Florida Schools. Again, a soft launch really to support providers as well as K-12 schools to customize their page for our consumers and our families across the state so they know what they're signing up for, right? And so just an unbelievable opportunity for a one online portal to provide all the childcare options that are across the state of Florida, as well as our K-12 schools, private, public, faith-based, charter, it does not matter, right? That they have this one-stop shop to identify a school or childcare that best meets their family's needs. So super excited about it. Again, soft launch. Providers and schools are working on their pages currently, but all the information is readily available on our website, which I will drop in the chat now.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. I'm excited about that portal. My background is in child welfare, and I was in placements for a long time, and a huge barrier was finding childcare that affected so many placement options for our children. So instead of foster parents and just parents and caregivers having to call around to so many different providers, there's this one-stop shop. You can go and see what the availability is, what's open. Like you said, the curriculum and stuff, that is awesome. So I encourage parents, caregivers, get on the portal, figure out how to navigate it, and see what centers or early learning resources may best meet your family's needs. Also, as providers, get on and make sure that your information is there and up to date so that our parents and our families can identify and find you to potentially become little students in your schools. So we have our roadmap advisory board working on the state level to push forward specific recommendations. And now we have community drivers on that same road, choosing recommendations to prioritize locally. Diana, as a community driver, Thrive by 5 Tampa Bay is already leading the work. You all are already convening the voices in your communities. And now you are collaborating with the roadmap and implementing roadmap recommendations in your local community. What recommendations have you all chosen to implement, and how is that going?
Well, thanks, Vanessa. And first and foremost, we're so excited to be signed on to be a community driver. Madeline and the team has been really important to the work at Thrive by 5 in Tampa Bay. And our ultimate goal is kindergarten readiness and supporting families. So in the Tampa Bay area, only about 1 out of 2 of our children are deemed kindergarten ready, which is a huge problem that, of course, we see across the state and the country. So what we've done is we've come together. There's over 65 organizations that say, what do we do to change this? This is what I can do. These are some strategies we could use. How do we incorporate businesses? So we've done a lot of work in the space of working with parents and businesses. And so some of the things that we're excited to amplify that align with the roadmap is, first and foremost, we just launched our Thrive by 5 Connects platform. So that's where a caregiver goes in. They can go in anonymously, just share their zip code and also the age of their children, or if mom's pregnant, and just ideally fill out an entire screener, but they can feel out whatever they're comfortable with. And then the system will give their tailored list of services within their communities that they can call and connect with. So we're really excited to have launched that. Additionally, there's lots and lots of talk, of course, about literacy, and just with the ability to have so many fantastic partners at the table, had conversations with the ELCs and others, and the ELC of Hillsborough County said, we need an early literacy resource guide. And we partnered, and they promoted that work and were able to fund us to create a free literacy resource guide for our families in Hillsborough and Pinellas counties. And a lot of that, honestly, is for the entire state of Florida, because a lot of it is open to the state. So we have caregiver resources, digital books, free physical books delivered to your door, direct links to the library, program descriptions, QR codes. Like, let's get this out. And having such a large network that continues to grow, we've been able to get it out through all of our providers, through faith-based locations, through the school system, through all of the partners at the table. And we want to get our kids reading. We want books in the homes. We want literacy to be something that all families deem important, but to support them. So that's where Thrive by 5 Connects, the platform, comes in. If mom or dad are struggling or have multiple jobs, or there's food insecurities, there's other primary issues that they need to deal with, how do we help get them services so we can wrap our arms around the entire family? And so we also want to include our businesses in this. It's not just us preaching to the choir in our world of early learning. The business community has a really large role to play, because as we've talked about today, there are massive childcare issues in the workplace. We talk about family-friendly policies and the importance of that. So what this group has done, and that's our business engagement work group, they say, well, let's start honoring, let's start sharing best practices. Let's use some positive reinforcement. So we have an annual awards where we highlight families, and we work very closely with Bosses for Babies. So Rick actually chairs that committee as well. And really what we want to do is we want to get businesses thinking about, how can we do better for our families? How do we, do we need PTO, better benefits, flexible schedules? Do we need to make sure if they can't work remote, at least that they know exactly a couple weeks in advance of their hours? So what are these different things we can do? And so we bring together businesses. Most recently, PNC Bank spoke about their incredible corporate volunteerism program and how they listen to their employees and help them be engaged in the community. So that's a really cool initiative, Family Friendly Tampa Bay, that has absolutely grown. We had about 12 businesses sign on, and now we're at 45. And so very excited to honor them. Most recently, Buccaneers and the Rays and all the fun sports teams for those of you sports fans out there. But really making sure that people are talking about family-friendly policies, and not just in the soft way like we've covered today. Like, there's a real economic component of this as well. And we want to retain our employees and we want to treat them well. So really excited that we have a lot of initiatives that really fall under our Thriving Parents part of the roadmap, and thrilled to be able to support that and share those ideas with others.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. As I've told you time and time again, I love all that you all do at Thrive by 5, but especially that Thrive by 5 connects to support our parents by connecting them to the resources they need to help their family. Wow, I can't believe how quickly time has gone by. As you all have heard, we have a lot of movement around the roadmap. Now, imagine our future in Florida where each child has the early learning opportunities they need to thrive. There's a role here for all of us as Floridians to move this work forward and making that future that we imagine a reality. I ask that you all keep the conversations going. Join us on the future call. Share the roadmap with your professional, social, and personal networks. And please remember, it takes all of us.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and all of you. The faces of the roadmap are indeed beautiful. So if you've read the roadmap and found something that resonates with you, let us know. If you think you're already responding to one of the roadmap's recommendations in your communities, let us know. We want to highlight this and keep the conversation going on the positive momentum. And Vanessa mentioned the future call. You'll see a link in the chat for this. Every other week, it's a quick 45-minute connection point on something wonderful happening in our state for early learning. And unlike today, these are Zoom meetings where everyone's face is on and we can interact. So every other Tuesday, noon Eastern time, you'll see that pop up in the chat. More than 950 of you have already joined us on one of these calls since January, and there's a whole lot more to come. Now it's time to turn our attention inside the early learning classroom, and coincidentally to a school founded by one of our original Future Project steering committee members, Miss Rita Brown. Brownsville Preparatory Institute makes literacy a top priority for its students starting at age 3, and they have seen tremendous success. Vanessa, Rocio, and I took a field trip there during our visit to Tallahassee for Children's Week, and we were able to witness the stimulating conversations and the activities and really get a glimpse into the culture of a place that believes every child who walks through their doors can do it. We wanted you to see it too, and so we'll take you on your own video field trip now.
The Brownsville Preparatory Institute is a pre-K 3 through 3rd grade environment.
Brownsville is a place of rigor, a place of community, a place of academic excellence. It is a place where we all come together with the same passion for education. We build a culture here. And I believe that one of the great reasons that people want to go here is because of what we instill in the children in the early years.
We're most known for teaching 3-year-olds how to read. And the reason the 3-year-olds are able to read at such early ages is because we attack the phonetic aspect of reading. We teach words and letters and sounds, and we teach them how to blend. And as a result of that, they're reading at early ages. I've always been an entrepreneur. In the 80s and the 90s in New York City, I owned a beauty supply store, beauty salon, barbershop, nail salon. I moved to Florida, and my daughter called up one day. She said, "Mom, why don't you think about starting your own school?" I said, "Okay." She made me get a job. I found out that I really did like other people's children, but I was not happy with the standard that children were being taught at. So I decided that I would turn a room in my home into a classroom. When I realized the impact that I was having on these children, it opened my eyes up to maybe there's an avenue here where I can actually be effective. I moved in town to a school that could hold maybe 30 kids. And in no time flat, we were full. My assistant principal, Ms. McLeod, was a student at the time at FSU. She has been with me now for the 19 years that we've been here, because I believe in raising teachers as well as raising students. The philosophy of education at Brownsville Prep is everybody is able to learn. There is no assumption based on your socioeconomic level. There is no assumption based on whether you're potentially neurodivergent or you're a ready and willing learner that you cannot learn.
Confidence comes and starts on day one, and it continues. My job as teacher, not only to teach them something and keep them safe, but my job is also not to let that spirit of learning, that fire, that willing to do, that eagerness die down.
The confidence in our students comes from the fact that we don't only drill and grill academics, education. Music is a huge part of their learning here. Learning songs, affirmations, I am somebody. When you teach a child that they are great at an early age, they actually believe it.
Let's go, Leo.
I am strong.
You are strong.
Social, emotional, all of that plays a big part in what happens inside of the classroom. And when I say meeting them where they are, some you have to really just say, hey, let me sit with you and let's get through it.
They give us hugs and they help us. If you can't get your feelings out, you have a bad day.
We are focusing on soft skills, which means I am drilling repetition of how this classroom runs for the whole school year. Yes, I may add something, but make sure they're staying in their own routine is what I need them to understand right now in this point in the school year.
Let's make it
a great day!
A great day! They're helping you to do your best and become the best you can be.
Brownsville is where we can learn and grow as a family. It's not just about reading, it's about the connection that we get with the students. You know, the effect that we have on the students, all that.
Also, that at-home connection with the parents, that's very big.
Starting her early just gave her confidence to be able to speak and know that she can do anything. There's no limits, and we try to make sure we instill that in her, that there's no limits to what she can do. I mean, she's 4 and she can do a whole lot.
American ants. Ants on the ground.
She was born right before COVID happened. So her social skills, I was afraid her social skills were going to lag. But her coming to Brownsville, they've been thriving. She's learning how to build friends and have those relationships, how to communicate, how to play with other kids.
We're learning all about me, who I am, where I am in time and space and in the world, and we interact with each other. So that introduction to myself and who I am and what I want to be, that's also instilling confidence. So we get to express that and express ourselves, and once we feel like we have a voice, then our confidence follows.
What is it that you want to be when you grow up?
President. And I'm not joking. I'm serious.
When you become a lover of learning, you just never stop learning. And that's why reading is very important in the early years, because if we can instill that culture, that love of learning, that love of reading early, their foundation is strong, it is set, and they'll just want to increase and know more.
We don't hire teachers based on their academic degrees. We don't hire teachers based on the experience they've had. We hire teachers based on fit. And if they can fit in with our culture of believing what we believe for children, if they can fit in with following the structures that we've put in place in a happy and joyful way, then they're for us. What they know, how much they know is not as important as their willingness to learn. So what you saw were teachers who were students, and matter of fact, Most of our teachers and our administrators are still students. Miss McLeod is getting her PhD. Miss Wright is getting her PhD. Miss Garrison has gotten her master's. Mr. Sheen just got his master's. Mr. Jackson is getting his next degree. Our preschool teachers have gotten their 2-year degrees, and we're now supporting them through the Teach Scholarship to go on and further their education. So our teachers are students, our students are students, and that is a climate that allows for constant learning to take place.
They are the next generation, our next leaders, our next doctors. And that's one thing I never let them forget.
I love what I do, not for a paycheck, not for recognition. I love what I do because of the kids and how it impacts the students each and every day.
Something so simple can spread so large. And that's the beauty of education. None of us own it, but we can all share it.
It is so powerful to see this, and an important reminder to recognize that nurturing those core life skills like confidence, communication, and problem solving is just as critical as the phonics and early literacy skills. So we know how important literacy is. We know that supporting our young readers is not just about putting books in their hands, it's also about building relationships and fostering a love of reading. So I'd be remiss at the start of another school year if I didn't ask each and every one of you who has an extra hour available to volunteer in a classroom to consider being a reading pal. And you'll see more in the chat about what that means. We've got more than 2,500 students who were matched with a mentor last year in 500 classrooms across 19 counties, and this could be you. So look to the chat for more information. Before we close today, we have one more message to share, and this one is from the next leader of the Florida Senate. President-designate Ben Albritton represents Charlotte, DeSoto, and Hardee counties, as well as parts of Lee and Polk counties. And if you've heard him speak, you know how passionate he is about supporting the state's rural communities. You might not know he is a really proud grandfather and foster parent, and he sees and appreciates the work that you do in early childhood, as he will tell us.
Hello, everyone. Ben Albritton here. I can't tell you how much of a joy and a blessing it is to be able to spend time with you, to be able to share some thoughts with you, to help you understand where my mind is going into the next 2 years of my Senate presidency, and quite honestly, how much I'm encouraged by the work that you do. And I want to offer that encouragement to you. I want you to feel uplifted, and I want you to know that you make a difference. Missy and I, not just in raising our own 3 kids that are all adults now, but through our entire adult life, we have poured ourselves into supporting families and children, mostly in the foster and adoption space. We've seen a lot of difficult circumstances, seen a lot of trauma. But we've also seen through that an opportunity to provide for support, provide for just encouragement there in that space as well, but looking for ways to produce better outcomes for those kids and those families, and then ultimately a more healthy environment for them to live in and flourish in. Which leads me to what you do. I want you to know, first of all, that we are incredibly thankful that you do what you do, and the passion that you have, the thoughtfulness you have, the energy that you pour into these kids and families here in Florida. It is a noble cause, and certainly one that will change the future in a way that's hard to even contemplate or measure today. So thank you for that. One of the things that we have seen in our work in these families is that many times kids will get into kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and everybody knows, of course, in third grade you take your reading test, and you've got to pass that to go on to the fourth grade. But these kids in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they are behind the curve, and they struggle to read, they struggle with math, they struggle in trying just to keep up. And that in itself could be an incredible hit on their self-confidence and many of the things that help them to grow and mature and feel good about who they are and what they do. Early learning support is certainly important, and thank you for the work that you do in that. Something else that's really emerging here in Florida that is having really a profound impact on many families here. I would suspect that each of you that are listening to this, and many families, if not every family around the state, has been impacted some way, somehow, with autism. It's growing in its impact and its prevalence in our childhood population. So I'm certainly no expert, but I will tell you that I've read a couple of books about it because I know it's important. I know it's an emerging, really prevalent challenge that we have in society today with our kids. And one of the things that both of those books really harped on and really focused on was early intervention and screening to make sure as soon as possible in the child's life that the parents and those around them that are being supportive of that family know that that child has autism. And the data is really pretty clear. When that can happen and interventions can happen early, the parents can understand what they're really up against and how to deal with those struggles and those challenges with those very precious, just unique children. They can flourish and they can have a great life. They can have happiness, and their family can flourish, and that's really important. So I also am thankful for the work that you do in that space. It really is a big blessing to be able to spend time with you. Again, I want you to know that you're highly valued. The work that you do makes a real difference in the lives of real families with real challenges here in Florida. So don't stop what you're doing. Keep your foot on the gas, keep focused, keep the energy going. I want you to know also that these issues, these challenges, and specifically children, are going to be at the top of the list of things that I focus on as Senate President. There is no more honorable endeavor, and the truth is, when you think about society as a whole, working to support children and families can make a difference in the future that we can hardly imagine how great it can be. So thanks for the time. Thanks for the opportunity. I love you guys. I appreciate what you do. Just know we're for you.
You know what? I love you guys too. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of our program. I'm so grateful for this call to engage with the Senate on early intervention, early education, and all of the issues that matter for young children and the adults who care for them, including, as we're seeing in the chat, pediatric care and nutrition and things we haven't had a chance to talk about today. It is hard to believe that we've come to the end. It's been such a wonderful morning. And what we know is that when employers foster the most supportive workplaces and our elected leaders make smart policy choices and community programs and schools nurture young families, then we get just a little bit closer to meeting the challenge to make this state the family friendliest in the country. And before you go, I just want to invite all of you to join us in this challenge and participate in some of our upcoming events. So just want to give one final thank you to our sponsors today, Florida Blue and Marco Polo Learning, and thank all of you for being our partners and allies. Of course, my last thanks goes to our team at the Children's Movement of Florida, who worked so hard to bring you this summit. This program with speakers who cover the map of Florida and represent so much of the beautiful diversity of our state is a reflection of their work throughout the year. So on behalf of everybody, all of us, we appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here.